but we talked to Kolchak in this. So, we're going to get started then? Okay. So give me the green light to get going. Okay, you're here to see the Night Stalker, obviously. I'm not going to start with Night Stalker, because that's not where it started with me. I'm going to start with another 70s TV character, Columbo. Why am I starting with Columbo? Because I wrote the book on Columbo. It was published in 1989. That's all right. It was published in 1989, and it was the history of the show. And it did pretty well. And I was going to do another book. I was working on a different book. And a publisher called me, a small publisher, Image Publishing, and the guy said, I love your Columbo book. I said, well, that makes two of us. He said, listen, have you ever thought about doing the same kind of book about the Night Stalker? And I said, I love the Night Stalker. I just didn't know there was a publisher crazy enough to do that. He said, I'm crazy enough to do it. And I said, well, wait. Let me see if I can get the four people, to my mind, are the most important people to the Night Stalker story. If I can get them to cooperate, I'll write the book. And to my mind, those four people were Darren McGavin, who played Carl Kolchak, Richard Matheson, who adapted the story, Jeff Rice, who wrote the original novel that the movie was based on, and Dan Curtis, who produced it. And in short order, all four of them said yes. So that book was published in 1991 as Night Stalking. It was republished in 1997 as The Night Stalker Companion. A few people have brought that antique to my table to be signed. And it's probably the book I get asked about the most. And people will say, where can I get the book? And I say, well, you can't anymore. And if you do find a copy of it, you're probably going to pay some outrageous highway internet robbery price for it. Which is why we are revising it. And that book will probably be published next year. It got sidetracked, but we're trying to work out now with the publisher and how to make this work, but it's going to happen, folks. And the revised version is going to be about 500 pages. It's going to have all new chapters about what's happened since 1997. And it is going to have a gorgeous new cover by this guy right here, Mark Maddox, who, and the cover is done. And Mark's here, so I'll let Mark just say a little bit here about how important this character is to him.
All right, first off, this is the man. I'm just a little fanboy who loves the stuff tremendously, who has the ability to draw likenesses. The Night Stalker, I'm a kid, I'm in grade school, and advertisements start up on ABC saying this new movie's going to come on. And the question was, he goes, the women are being killed, this nut thinks he's a vampire. He's killed maybe 4, maybe 5 women, and you sort of go, all right, what are we dealing with here as a little kid? Is it just a nut, which we would later see John Saxon do on Starsky and Hutch, or is it is this an actual vampire? And everybody tuned in. It was the largest, am I correct? The largest television movie. Yeah. Because the way that they did the ad was, this nut thinks he's a vampire. Is this just a nut? And everybody was, I gotta find out. I gotta see if this is just some crazy guy. Well, I'm in the 4th or 5th grade. I don't remember exactly. I wasn't disappointed. No spoilers. Anybody not seen this film before? Anybody? Okay, well, all right, so we know. But it was so tight, so beautifully done, so fast-paced and so exciting that all these years later, I've done my share of the Kolchak artwork for books and magazine articles and stuff, and when this guy contacted me and said he wanted me to do the cover, I was ecstatic. To basically put my cover on what is going to be the book, the last word, on the show, the movie, the 2 movies, and everything else that came after it. So I thank you very much, and I'm making mine short because this is the smart guy. I just draw pictures.
And I won't delay too much more because, you know, you're really here to see the movie.
Yeah.
So I will just say one more thing about what Mark just said. I was a little older than Mark when this aired. I was 15. And I became a journalist because of this movie. I thought this was what a journalist is. I found my profession because of this movie. And I started my work towards a journalism degree at George Washington University, which is located just a few blocks away from the White House, in September of 1974. What happened in September of 1974?
Watergate.
It's just a couple of weeks after Richard Nixon has resigned the presidency. And why does he resign the presidency? Because of journalism. Because of an act of journalism. Now, what else happens in September 1974? Friday the 13th, Kolchak the Night Stalker premieres as a series.
Yep.
It premiered on the same time I'm starting college. Now, journalism departments at this point are doing land office business because of Woodward and Bernstein and Watergate. I was surrounded by students who wanted to be Woodward and/or Bernstein. They thought if you became a journalist, you brought down presidents. You got Pulitzer Prizes. I was going to journalism school, and I didn't want to be Woodward and/or Bernstein. I wanted to be Karl Kolchak. And I have since learned, working in newspapers for 43 years, that other reporters felt the same way. I have had so many journalists tell me. I worked for 16 years at the Akron Beacon Journal as their TV critic. And one day, I was crossing the newsroom, and I see our labor reporter, Terry Oberlander, big guy, he was built like a bear. And he's yelling at an editor. And I can't hear what he's saying, but I can see him gesticulating. And as I get closer and closer, I hear him say, "This is a newspaper! We're supposed to print the news, not suppress it." It's word for word Kolchak, right out of the movie.
Yeah.
And I got right up behind him and I said, "You're doing Kolchak." And I thought Terry was a big guy. I thought he was going to wheel around and punch me right in the nose. He wheeled around. He had the biggest grin on his face I'd ever seen. And he said, "You're the first one who ever got it."
Yeah.
He said, "I love that speech. It's everything that a reporter is supposed to be." So even though book-wise I started with Columbo, in my own history I started with Kolchak. So I have spent an awful lot of time in this guy's company. Not the 2 versions, but in between those 2 versions of the Kolchak Companion, I wrote the first Kolchak novel in 20 years, Grave Secrets, which was published in 1994. With Jeff Rice's cooperation. He was my editor on that book. I edited Richard Matheson's Kolchak scripts, which brought together his scripts for The Night Stalker, the sequel, The Night Strangler, and then the 3rd movie, which never got made, which was called The Night Killers, which Richard Matheson wrote with Bill Nolan, and it had a great premise. And everybody thinks, you know, and says to me, Kolchak inspired the X-Files. And why do we think that? Because Chris Carter told anybody who listened to him that he was inspired by The Night Stalker. But The Night Killers was the most X-Files story they ever came up with. It's about aliens replacing politicians with androids. How does that not sound like an X-Files?
Yeah.
And that's the one they never made. That's the one they never got made. So anyway, you're gonna, one of the things I love about this movie, the last thing I'm going to say, because as Mark Twain once said, it's a terrible death to be talked to death. The last thing I'm going to tell you is, this movie got a 54 share. That means more than 1 out of 2 people watching television the night it aired in January of 1972 were watching this movie on the 3rd rated network at the time. That's how many people were watching this movie. And it wasn't just horror fans. It wasn't just people intrigued like Mark and myself.
Right.
And why does this movie have that big an appeal? Because it's 3 movies in one. That's why. It is a horror movie. It is your classic Dracula story. A vampire invading a major city. Where have we heard that before? We've heard it a lot. Except in this case, he's invading the most American city of all, Las Vegas, baby. He's invading a city that's on his time schedule. It's up all night. Las Vegas is a smorgasbord for a vampire. What a great idea. Setting a vampire story in the most American of cities. So it's not only a vampire story, but like Dracula, which is done in an epistle form, and you're reading it, and it really feels like something that actually happened. This movie feels like something that's actually happening. It's done in a verite style. So it's a verite horror movie. 1. 2, it's a film noir detective story. Kolchak operates like your classic Sam Spade, Humphrey Bogart type detective on a case. The case just happens to be supernatural. And 3rd, it's an old-fashioned newspaper comedy, like The Front Page, some movie with Clark Gable or Frederick March yelling at his editor all the time in the 1930s. Cut the gap, sweetheart, get me rewrite. That kind of a comedy. And those 3 things should not go together. There's no way in hell those 3 things should mesh. And yet, they mesh seamlessly and beautifully in this movie. So you can be a fan of a whole lot of different things and love this movie. So please enjoy the night. Does anybody have any questions before this?
Oh,
Yeah.
did you ever talk to Simon Oakland and Vincenzo?
I did not. Cy Oakland died before I started research on the book. Nobody had a bad word about Simon Oakland. He was one of the nicest, nice guys ever. You know, he was a classically trained violinist, a great actor, wonderful guy, and believe me, the people I interviewed, if there was something nasty to say about somebody, they'd have said it. Darren McGavin never pulled a punch, and Dan Curtis certainly never pulled a punch. So if there was something bad, I heard it. And nobody ever said a bad word about Simon. Anybody else? All right. Enjoy the movie and thank you.
Thank you. One thing I remember just before you pulled the trigger on the film.
We're doing Columbo now, just one more thing.
Yeah, that's right. You killed it. Is that I was on the playground the next day after this film, and a bunch of kids who did not like horror films were talking to me about this movie. And you realize at certain points they were all my slaves. Is that there is things that transcend, like when Star Wars came out, and then it was okay to have science fiction on your back. But the kids on the playground, everybody was talking about this film the next day. It made me feel good because I was already there. I loved horror and science fiction, but superb film, excellent movie.
Enjoy.